Okay. Oh, what a great day to read. It's just a little bit nippy out. Lambo's lazy boy. So we're going to just curl up here and read. And got my coffee. So hopefully when you read, you get nice and comfy. Isn't it just the best? All right. Detectives and Togas. Chapter 13, the baths of Diana. You know, in ancient Rome, they had big baths where people would go, but only the rich could afford to go. So, here we go. Next morning, he was rudely awakened. A brawny Arab was stooping over him, shaking him roughly by the shoulder. "This time I've caught you, you scamp," he railed. "This is the second time you've sneaked in here at night. Get up. You're going straight to the police." Mucius started up, stammering, What's the matter? Where am I? Who are you?" "I am the superintendent," the Arab said. "How did you get in here?" "I fell through by accident," Mucius said, pointing to the skylight overhead, through which a bit of morning sky could be seen. "You're lying," the superintendent grunted. "You jumped in here late night before last, too. Yesterday morning you got away from me, but you won't be so lucky today." "I'm not lying," Mucius cried out. "I did fall in last night, and I've never fallen in before." "Oh, you deny it? What's your name?" "Mucius Marius Domitius," Mucius said proudly. "Ha!" the superintendent exclaimed with righteous wrath. "Then you're the one." And he thrust a bronze lantern under Mucius's nose. "So, here's your name, right here. Mucius Marius Domitius. This is your lantern. That proves it. Lying won't do you any good." Mucius was speechless. It actually was his lantern, the very one Rufus had taken by mistake. The superintendent grinned triumphantly. "I found the lantern yesterday morning on the floor of the pool. You're a liar and deserve a good thrashing." But Mucius was paying no attention, for a stirring thought had occurred to him. Could Rufus also have been in the baths of Diana yesterday? "What was the boy like? The one you found here yesterday?" he asked quickly. The superintendent was startled. "What's that? What was he like?" "Like you, of course." "That couldn't be," Mucius said. "He can't have looked like me because I wasn't here." The superintendent's bad temper returned. "So here we go again. Of all the bare-faced. Listen, you little scamp, you have some way of getting in the bathing without paying the entrance fee. For that kind of trick, you'll go to prison." This frightened Mucius. Prison was the last place he wanted to go. "I didn't intend to sneak in," he said. "I'll pay. What is the fee?" 10 sesterces. Children half price," the superintendent said. "I'll bring you the money today," Mucius said. "No, wait a minute. Maybe I have it with me." He hastily rolled up his toga, reached into the pocket of his tunic, and found to his relief that he had not lost the handkerchief with the money. He untied the knot, picked out a silver coin worth 20, and gave it to the superintendent. "But I have no change," the superintendent said, his eyes riveted on the money in the handkerchief. "No change required," Mucius said generously. The superintendent hesitated. "Where did you get all that money?" he asked suspiciously. "It's my pocket money," Mucius boldly claimed. He did not feel like telling the complicated story of how he happened to have the money with him. "Your father must be awfully rich to be able to give you so much pocket money," the superintendent said slowly. "My father is Marius Domitius, the tribune," Mucius said. The superintendent's eyes widened in disbelief. "What's that?" he exclaimed. "His Excellency Domitius? You mean it?" Mucius gave a superior smile and pointed to the lantern. "There it is," he said. "Marius Domitius. You just read it to me." The superintendent's manner changed abruptly. He bowed low, stammering, "Excuse me, my words. I beg your pardon for them. Please don't report this little incident to your father. I did not realize. I let my temper run away with me. After all, I am in charge here and have to see that the rules are observed. We can't have just anybody sneaking in here and using the baths without paying. Besides, it's dangerous. I drain the water out of the pool every night. If boys get into the habit of sneaking in via the roof, one of them sooner or later is going to jump into the empty pool and break his bones. And then won't I be in trouble? You were very lucky, young sir, that there was still enough water in the basin. Shall I dry your clothes? You can't go home in that state." "No time for that," Mucius said, suddenly realizing that he had not been home all night. "How late is it anyway?" "The sun is just about risen." "I must hurry," Mucius said, and started at a trot for the entrance. Almost immediately, however, he slowed down to a stop. "Tell me about the boy who was here last night," he asked. "When I opened the doors yesterday morning," the superintendent said, "a boy dashed out of the building, almost knocking me down as he went by. It happened so quickly that I only caught a glimpse of him from the back. I couldn't catch him either. He shot off like a barbarian. He must have come in by way of the roof the night before. That is the only way he could have got in, because I make sure the place is empty before I lock up every night, and this is the only entrance. When I found you on the bench this morning, I naturally thought you were the same fellow. But if you say you're not, he added a hasty apology. You'd better take your money back." "Never mind about that," Mucius called and trotted off. "Very kind of you, young sir," the superintendent called after him. Mucius ran the short distance to Broad Street, crossed, and made a detour around the Forum. He did not want to be seen by people in his present condition. His clothes were wet and filthy, and his hair an uncombed shock. But suddenly he stopped dead as though struck by a bolt from the blue. "Heavenly gods," he murmured to himself, "Rufus is innocent." For it had suddenly occurred to him that Rufus could not possibly have written "Caius is a dumbbell" on the temple wall. Rufus had been locked up all night long in the baths of Diana. When Mucius had finished his story, his friends gazed at him in silence. They did not know whether to be awed or to burst out laughing. What a wild tale! How were they to believe it? On the other hand, there were things he had brought back with him. Rufus's cloak, which was still wet, and his own lantern. Apparently he was not telling tales, in which case he was a hero and deserving of great respect. They were in their secret cave, sitting on rickety boxes around a table on whose cracked marble top a candle was burning. Playing one day on the Equiline Hill, they had come across the roomy cave in the rock, and had promptly appropriated it for their own use. It was their official headquarters. Here they met whenever they had anything important to discuss, and here they hid when it seemed wise to keep out of sight for a short while. One dark corner was piled with old junk which they had collected around town, and which they intended to use some day to furnish their cave. Over the entrance they had hung a tattered old rug to serve as a curtain. Publius was the first to express his doubts of Mucius's tale. "You mean to tell us you spent the entire night locked up in the baths of Diana?" he asked slowly. "You can ask the superintendent if you don't believe me," Mucius replied, affronted. "What did your folks say about your being out all night?" Flavius asked timidly. "I was lucky," Mucius said. "They were at the theater yesterday afternoon, and afterwards they went to a party. So they came home late and slept late in the morning. Only our doorkeeper saw me this morning, and he won't tell on me." "If I had known you were going to stay at Lucas's, I would have stayed too," Antonio said. "I didn't stay by choice," Mucius said. "I was trapped there when you idiots slammed the door behind you." "Would Lucas have done anything bad to you?" Flavius asked. "That I can't say," Mucius replied. "But snakes were crawling all over the place, and I didn't like that." "I would have stabbed Lucas with my dagger," Antonio boasted. "If you hadn't fallen down dead from fright first," Publius mocked him. "Quiet! All this is beside the point," Julius interrupted them. He pushed the candle aside, leaned across the table, and looked searchingly into Mucius's face. So your idea is that Rufus spent the fatal night locked up in the baths of Diana too? He asked. I've explained the whole thing to you, Mucius said impatiently. Rufus must have gone to see Lucos. Then he must have jumped into the baths of Diana. In the morning, when the superintendent opened the door, he scooted out and ran away. And the only way he would have gotten in was the way I did, through the skylight in the ceiling. That must have been between the first and second hours of the night, when there was still enough water in the pool. If he had jumped half an hour later, he would have broken his neck. So Rufus is innocent. He could not have written on the temple wall. But what made him visit Lucos? Flavius asked. The gods alone know that, Mucius said. All I know is that if he was inside the baths of Diana, he could only have got there by crossing roofs from Lucos's house. Lucos's house is the only one around that is as high as the baths. What Mucius says makes sense, Julius said excitedly. Remember Rufus's clothes that we found under his bed? They were soaking wet. So there, Mucius burst out, pleased by this support. They were wet because he jumped into the pool at the baths of Diana. We must do something at once, Julius said. But what? Flavius asked. We'll go to see Livia and tell her all about it. What can Livia do? Flavius asked. She herself said that she is powerless. The prefect of the city won't receive her because he knows that the emperor is down on Praetonius. Then we have to go to the emperor himself, Flavius reasoned. If the emperor orders Rufus's release, that's all there is to it. That was a bold idea. What do you know? Flavius jeered. Flavius is turning into a hero in his old age. That isn't a bad idea, Mucius said. We can prove to the emperor that Rufus is innocent. It's not as easy as all that, Julius said. He dropped his voice and went on in a whisper. The emperor is heavily guarded. He lives in fear that someone will try to kill him. You don't get admitted just like that. You have to ask for an audience, and that can take days. I know what we can do, Antonius said with a wild conspiratorial expression. What? The others asked sulkily. Antonius's suggestions were apt to be pretty crazy. We'll write him a letter. Antonius rapped out, He can't be scared of a letter. The others were stunned. For once, Antonius's proposal was sensible. They would leave the letter at the palace, and it would surely be delivered to the emperor at once. But who is going to write it? Flavius asked. You, of course, Flavius said. You have the best handwriting in the class. For once, it will come in handy. Flavius protested, but was voted down. What shall I write on? He complained. That's easy, Julius said, taking a parchment roll out from under his toga. Here is a book of Cicero's orations. I don't like to part with it, but we'll use the back for the letter. It's fairly clean. Flavius had objections. A letter on the back of a book? What will the emperor think? He's likely to read the book and not the letter. The emperor is smarter than you are, Mucius said firmly. We can't take the time now to go looking for proper wax tablets. This is an emergency. The emperor will understand. Just cross out the writing of the book. But Julius would not hear of that. No, don't cross it out, he pleaded. That would be a pity. And besides, the emperor might be annoyed. He thinks the world of Cicero, and so he'll be pleased to get the book. Go ahead and write on the back. There's no harm in it. Come on. But I still don't know what to write, Flavius said miserably. I'll dictate to you, Julius offered. Flavius sat down at the table, unrolled the parchment, smoothed it out, placed the candle beside it, and picked up a charcoal pencil. Then he waited for Julius's dictation. Julius paced up and down, pondering. Finally, he stopped behind Flavius and began. Dear Emperor. But that was as far as he got. Mucius and Publius instantly pounced on him. That's not the proper salutation for the emperor, Mucius said. Then what is? Julius asked, offended. I know, Antonius burst out. Divine, merciless, merciful, glorious, let me start that again. you are being kind of a little bit distracting. Yeah. I know, Antonius burst out. Divine, merciful, glorious, revered, all-knowing emperor. That's too much, Mucius said. They quarreled about how the emperor ought to be addressed. Then they debated about every sentence as it was dictated to Flavius. And finally, they argued about the signature. It took almost an hour before the letter was completed. But at last, they were satisfied with it. And Flavius had to read it aloud several times. Most revered divine emperor, Flavius read. We are petitioning you for mercy for Rufus, son of Pretonius. He is in prison, accused of having written Caius is a dumbbell on the wall of the temple of Minerva, which is dedicated to you. Rufus is innocent, for he was locked up in the baths of Diana all night. He jumped into the pool through the opening in the roof. That must have been between the first and the second hours of the night. If he had jumped in when there was no water there, he would have been dead in the morning and could not have run away. The superintendent leaves at night and comes back in the morning. Meanwhile, he drains the water and locks the door. Rufus was in there and could not get out. He ran past the superintendent in the morning, and the superintendent thinks it was Mucius, but Mucius knows it was Rufus, for the superintendent found Mucius's lantern in the pool. But Rufus had the lantern with him, not Mucius. The two policemen said that Caius is a dumbbell was not on the temple wall before the 5th hour of the night. They know that for certain because that's the hour when they always get hungry and eat bread and figs and drink wine. The police always tell the truth. But Caius is a dumbbell was on the temple wall before dawn. At that time, Rufus was still locked in the baths of Diana. That should prove that Rufus doesn't go around desecrating temples. Therefore, we throw ourselves at your feet and ask for mercy for our friend Rufus, the pupils of the Xanthos school. Flavius stopped, out of breath. Could it be clearer, Mucius said, rubbing his hands with delight. Now we must hurry and deliver the letter to the palace, Julius said. Hold on. Haste makes waste, Flavius warned. Something else occurs to me. What about Scribonus? What do you mean? Mucius asked uneasily. Scribonus is the most famous handwriting expert in Rome, Flavius said. If Scribonus maintains that the writing is genuine, it is genuine. Julius murmured, and he began squinting at Mucius out of the corners of his eyes. Antonius and Flavius were also assailed by doubts once more. One or the other was telling the truth, Scribonus or Mucius. But Scribonus was a famous scholar, and Mucius was just a classmate. Mucius sat down on a box again, propped his head on his clenched fists, and stared into space. Maybe you only dreamed it all, Antonius said. I have funny dreams sometimes, too. Last night I dreamed I was a pirate and fell into the water, and I would have drowned if a dolphin hadn't. Furious, Mucius leaped to his feet and stuck Rufus's wet cloak under Antonius's nose. Blech. There, did I dream that? He shouted. And what about the lantern I found in the baths of Diana? The cloak smells bad, Antonius gasped, half smothered. Then don't talk such nonsense, Mucius said. Rufus is innocent. That isn't a dream, that is the truth. But then, who did the writing on the temple? Julius asked. The emperor will want to know that, too. I can't know who wrote on the temple, Mucius cried, beside himself, but somebody must have copied Rufus's handwriting. But who? Julius repeated stubbornly. Maybe it was a ghost, Antonius said. At that moment, there was a crashing noise in the dark corner of the cave, and a sullen voice said, It was me. The boys whirled around in fright. From back of the piles of junk, Caius emerged. He clambered over an upturned barrel. I was the one who wrote Caius is a dumbbell on the temple wall, he said, scowling at the boys. You? The boys exclaimed. Yes, said Caius. I copied his handwriting. The boys clustered around him in excitement. What made you do it? Mucius demanded. I wanted to get even. Then you were the one who broke into Xantippus's house? Flavius cried. Caius nodded. What did you hit him on the head with? Antonius wanted to know. With my fist, Caius said. Did you also denounce Rufus to the prefect? Mucius asked with terrible sternness. No, that wasn't me, Caius said. I only wanted him to get a licking. I never thought he would be sent to prison. At this point, Plubius pushed forward and asked suspiciously, How were you able to fake Rufus's handwriting so well? Caius hesitated for just a moment, then growled unwillingly. I filled the grooves in the wax with red paint and pressed the tablet against the temple wall. Publius was taken aback. That's pretty slick. The others were equally astonished. They never would have thought of so simple of a trick. Only Julius sat pondering, a frown on his face. Okay, quit. You need to lay down. Sit. Good boy. Down. Good boy. You lay there. Okay, where was I? Caius isn't as dumb as we all thought, Plubius said. He even fooled Scribonus. He's lying, Julius said suddenly, in a loud and decisive voice. I am not, Caius said uncertainly. You are so lying, Julius retorted. You didn't copy Rufus's handwriting at all. If you had filled the grooves in the wax with red paint and pressed the wax tablet against the wall like you say, the writing would have come out turned around. I can prove it to you. Look at this, he told the others and went to the table. Taking the piece of charcoal with which Flavius had written the letter to the emperor, he crumpled it, spat vigorously into the bits several times, and with his fingers kneaded the mass into a black pulp. Then he rushed to the corner and came back with a smooth piece of board. Sticking his forefinger into this charcoal paste, he wrote the word Caius on the board. Then he pressed the board firmly upon the white marble tabletop, lifted it, and triumphantly showed them the result. On the tabletop, they could see distinctly, though, rather smearily, the word Caius, but it was backwards. Mucius turned around and studied Caius with great seriousness. Will you explain, please, why you said you did it when you didn't? He asked sternly. Caius stood with compressed lips, but abruptly he turned red and said, Take me to the prefect and tell him I did it. Then Rufus will be released. Oh, so that's the way the wind blows, Plubius cried scornfully. I suppose you're sorry now that you tattled to your father about Rufus, Mucius said. Caius nodded. It's my fault he's in prison, he muttered guiltily. Well, it's decent of you to admit it, Julius observed with more friendliness. Let's be nice to him again, Flavius said. He's sorry about it all. I'm not sorry about anything, Caius mumbled crossly. I want to be taken back in the gang again. That's all. We haven't any time to be playing, Mucius said. We have to find out who copied Rufus's handwriting. Otherwise, Rufus is done for. I know, Caius murmured with downcast eyes. I heard the whole thing. The reason I hid was because I wanted to know what you fellas were saying about me. How do you know that somebody faked the handwriting? That's just what we can't prove, Mucius said. Nobody will believe us. People will believe Scribonus. Maybe there's some trick to it, Caius said, scratching himself behind the ear. He looked anything but bright as he did so. Or magic, Antonius suggested. At the word trick, Julius had looked up and fixed his eyes on Caius with a cunning expression. How did you happen to think up that story of the paint and the grooves of the wax, he asked. Did you hit on that all by yourself? I once watched the way our cook baked cookies, Caius replied. The cookies were all shaped like letters. That was a long time ago, but it made a big impression on me. He had wooden molds, which were shaped like letters. He placed the molds on a bronze platter. Then he poured the dough into the grooves of the letters and put the platter in the oven. When he took the platter out later and lifted the molds, there were the baked letters right on the platter. He gave them to me so I could learn to read, but I ate them. "Heavenly gods help me," Julius murmured, overwhelmed. "I bet I have it." "Have what?" "Of course, that's the way it was done. No other way possible," Julius moaned. "He's gone out of his mind," Flavius said. "An evil spirit has gotten into him," Antonio said. "Let him talk," Mucius shouted at them. "I know how Rufus's writing was copied," Julius said. Someone pierced through the letters on his wax tablet, then pressed the tablet against the wall and ran a brush dipped in red paint over the grooves. That way, "Caius is a dumbbell" would appear on the wall just the way Rufus wrote it. It took a while for the others to grasp what he meant, but then they all cheered him loudly. Julius had solved the mystery. Flavius and Antonius danced with joy. Mucius pounded Julius on the back. "You're a genius," he praised him. Caius alone had not understood a word of the explanation, but no one had expected him to. Even Publius had nothing to criticize this time. "I had a hunch it was something of the sort," he said with a grin. "Let's have that letter," Mucius said. "We must add this explanation. Rufus will certainly be freed today." Flavius had to sit down at the table again, and Julius and Mucius began dictating the postscript about the forging of the script. But before Flavius could finish the last sentence, they heard a well-known voice at the entrance saying, "So I finally caught up with you scoundrels!" And in hobbled Xanthippus, leaning on a stick. The boys gaped. Xanthippus himself in person. What could have made him seek them out in their cave? Certainly nothing pleasant, and sure enough, Xanthippus was anything but in a sweet temper. "If Rumpus hadn't told me you might be in your cave, I would never have found you," he scolded. "Lovely tales I've been hearing." Groaning, he limped toward them, paused, and looked around for a seat. Mucius hastily took a box and offered it to their teacher. Xanthippus cautiously settled down on the box and glanced around with a frown of disapproval, for the cave was not exactly a model of neatness. Then he went on. "Rufus's mother and Rumpus came to see me. They had the idea that you might be at school, but of course you weren't to be found. Livia told me about this sorry mess with Rufus. A terrible thing, terrible. There isn't much I can do, since I am not a Roman citizen, but I assured her of my support. My leg still hurts like the devil, but I went looking for you. I had to rent a sedan chair with 2 bearers. They're waiting for me outside, and every minute is costing me money. So hurry up. What did Lucos say?" The boys remained shamefacedly silent. Finally, Julius murmured, "For some reason, Lucos wouldn't use his second sight for us." "But we found out for ourselves that Rufus is innocent," Mucius declared proudly. "So you have you?" Xanthippus said. "You might have taken the trouble to let Livia know, leaving that poor woman in suspense all this time. Is that nice?" "Well, we wrote a letter to the emperor first," Julius said. Xanthippus raised his eyebrows. "You wrote a letter to the emperor?" "We wanted to show that Rufus is completely innocent and ask for a pardon for him," Mucius said. "Where is this fine letter of yours?" "Here," Mucius handed their teacher the book on which Flavius had written the letter. Xanthippus moved closer to the light. "Excuse me. What are you boys doing? Do you have to go outside?" Let me put the pups out. Take a break for just a second. Okay, come on. You're making quite the noise over here. All right. Out you go. Okay, now there's going to be a lot of barking out there. Where were we? We wrote a letter to the emperor first, Julius said. Xanthippus raised his bushy eyebrows. You wrote a letter to the emperor? We wanted to show that Rufus is completely innocent and ask for a pardon for him, Mucius said. Where is this fine letter of yours? Here, Mucius handed their teacher the book on which Flavius had written the letter. Xanthippus moved closer to the light, unrolled the parchment, and began to read. How long, O Catiline, will you continue to abuse our patience? How long will you continue to mock us with your madness? Will your unbridled impudence never cease? He broke off, stared mystified at his pupils, and asked, What is the meaning of this? Why do you drag in Cicero's oration? That happens to be a copy of Cicero, Mucius said. Our letter's on the back. You might have told me that in the first place, Xanthippus growled irritably. He turned the roll over and silently read the letter. Then he looked up and asked darkly, Who wrote this? I did, Flavius admitted. A frightful piece of work, Xanthippus snarled. Swarming with mistakes. Your spelling is disgraceful. I'll see about this when school begins again. He tossed the parchment roll on the table. Furthermore, your logic is full of holes, and your proofs are worthless, he continued. I am not surprised that you all are so bad in mathematics. Sit down. The boys obediently took seats on the boxes. No place was left for Flavius, and he had to sit on the floor. Does any of you have the faintest recollection of Pythagoras? Xanthippus asked. The boys nodded eagerly, although they no longer remembered what Pythagoras was all about. In a right-angled triangle, the square of the hypotenuse equals the sum of the squares of the two sides. What do we call such a statement? Xanthippus asked. A riddle, Caius mumbled. Xanthippus gave him a withering look, then turned contemptuously away and called. Julius? A proof, Julius replied. Wrong, Xanthippus said. It is a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement which must be proved before it is accepted as true. The so-called proofs in your letter are nothing more than hypotheses. Did anyone see Rufus in the baths of Diana? No, Mucius admitted. Then you have no witnesses, and without witnesses you can prove nothing. Now, about the forging of the script. It is possible that Rufus's writing tablet was used as a pattern, but who is to say that Rufus himself did not do it? Julius raised his hand. Yes, Xanthippus said. Why should Rufus go to all the trouble of piercing through the wax when all he had to do was write on the wall? Have you ever tried writing in the dark? Xanthippus asked. Julius had not thought of that. You see, Xanthippus said complacently, you don't even write well by light. The other boys laughed. Julius looked insulted. Quiet, Xanthippus commanded. I am not here to amuse you. Then do you think Rufus is guilty? Mucius asked timidly. Xanthippus suddenly flew into a rage. The veins stood out on his temples. Did I say that? He barked. No, Mucius stammered. Then don't ask such silly questions. Xanthippus stared down at the tabletop, pondering, and the boys did not dare to stir. They were waiting for more hard words and sarcastic questions. Livius should have known better than to get Xanthippus into this. He couldn't believe that anything they did was any good. All he could do was interfere. When Xanthippus looked up again, however, he seemed to be in a somewhat milder mood. I know Rufus, and he isn't the kind of boy who goes around defacing temples, he said. We'll save him yet. The boys' spirits rose. Xanthippus was capable of human emotion after all. Delighted, Mucius cried out. We've been racking our brains trying to think who really did it. Xanthippus said, You have no doubt overlooked the very point that may give us a lead. Mucius, tell me once more, and very carefully, all that you have so far learned about the whole affair in regard to Rufus. I want every little point, even something that seems unimportant may give us a clue." Mucius stood up as if he were in class, took a deep breath, and began somewhat clumsily to tell the story. But as he went on, he gained assurance. He gave a blow-by-blow description of everything that had happened since the fateful quarrel between Rufus and Caius, what he had done and what the other boys had done, what they had discovered, what conclusions they had drawn. Now, for the first time, he saw some use in all the drill that Xanthippus had given them in the art of public speaking. When he had finished, Xanthippus nodded approval. "Take your seat," he said. Mucius sat down. Xanthippus reflected for a while. Then he pounded his stick twice against the rocky floor of the cave. And said, "That's the point about one of the pitfalls of getting comfy and cozying up in a blanket and pillows. You want to fall asleep, right?" He pounded his stick twice against the rocky floor of the cave and said, "We have one point to stand on." The boys stared at him in suspense. "Our point is the newspaper report," Xanthippus went on. "What occurred to you when you read the report about the defacing of the temple?" "Nothing," Julius confessed. "We were angry," Flavius said. "On the contrary, you should have been pleased," Xanthippus declared. "The newspaper report proves to us that Rufus is not guilty. That, in fact, he is completely innocent." "Why?" the boys chorused. "Because the newspaper report was written before the defacing of the temple was committed," Xanthippus said. "Do you understand?" The boys did not. "Then I shall have to explain this simple matter to you," Xanthippus sighed. "The censor's office, which publishes the newspaper, does not open until the 3rd hour of the day. The first task of the officials is to post the morning newspaper in the forum. But the reports for the newspaper are written the night before. You see, they are written in script, and that requires much time and trouble. If the officials only began in the morning, it would be very late before the first edition of the newspaper appeared. Therefore, one copyist and one official to receive reports always remains in the office at night until the 4th, or at least the latest, the 5th hour, in order to gather material and rewrite the stories. I myself once worked in the censor's office for several years, so I know exactly what the procedure is. Sometimes couriers with especially important news items arrive late at night. These items are published the next day. Now, the item about the defacing of the temple appeared in the first morning edition. That means that it must have been delivered at the censor's office by the 4th hour of the night at the latest. I hope all this is penetrating your thick skulls so that I won't have to repeat it 10 times. The boys nodded assent. They were gradually beginning to realize how the newspaper report fitted into the mystery, although they still did not see how it would help them track down the real culprit. According to the testimony of the 2 policemen, Xanthippus continued, there was nothing on the temple wall well before the 5th hour of the night. Accordingly, the newspaper report was written before the defacing of the temple, and that should give us something to think about. Couldn't this have been an exception and the item added to the bulletin in the morning? Julius asked. Such exceptions do occur when there is news of really unusual importance, which this was not, Xanthippus stated. But we have even clearer evidence that no such exception was made for this particular item. Mucius said that the report was about in the middle of the newspaper, among many other reports. Is that right? Yes, the boys chorused. That proves that it could not have been added in the morning, or it would have been placed on an extra board. Besides which, the item was unusually long. Most news items are published in very brief form, especially the extras. The officials, therefore, must have taken time to write it all out in full. The length of the report, moreover, suggests that it was sent by a very important personage, so that the officials did not dare to shorten it. Xanthippus stood up and began hobbling back and forth, leaning on his stick. We therefore have to consider the following points, he continued. How did this important personage know that Caius is a dumbbell was going to be written on the temple wall? What was his interest in seeing that the incident was reported in the newspaper? Why was suspicion so obviously pointed toward the pupils of the Xanthos school? And finally, who is this personage? This last question is the first matter we have to discover. That ought not to be too difficult. For example, if we know which courier delivered the report, we can find out who sent him. I am unfortunately out of commission. My leg hurts and I must go back home and lie down again. You boys will have to find out who the courier was. Go to the courier's office and ask to speak to the official who receives the night reports. Ask him which courier brought the item about the defacing of the temple. Then come to me at once and we will see what our next step is. But kindly hurry up this time and don't waste your time on idle talk and silly letter writing. Good luck. He hobbled off toward the exit. What will we do if the report was delivered by an unknown courier? Julius asked after him. Xanthippus turned around. No official would accept a report from an unknown courier. The couriers must carry credentials with them. Any official who publishes a false story can be punished by death. And now, don't ask so many questions. Get to work. Xanthippus disappeared through the curtain, and the boys hurried after them. Outside, the bearers, two powerful slaves, were waiting with their sedan chair. Xanthippus climbed in and ordered them to carry him back to Broad Street. The bearers energetically shouldered the chair and started off at a trot along the narrow path. Xanthippus thrust his head out once more and called to the boys. You'd better clean up your cave. It's a regular pigsty. Then he disappeared around a turning. We didn't invite him, Publius remarked. Did you understand everything he said? Caius asked. I shudder to think of what we'll be in for when school starts again, Flavius said, sighing. If you ask me, Xanthippus has been pretty decent, Julius commented. He's really trying to be of help. I guess he's sorry he treated Rufus so badly, Flavius said. He's really smart, Julius said appreciatively. We never would have thought about that newspaper business. The important personage must be a whopping big crook, Antonio said. Are we really going to the censor's office? Flavius asked worriedly. Of course, Mucius said, and right away. Let's go. Follow me. He started off, taking great leaps down the steep slope. Okay. Wow. I didn't think I'd get through that before I fell asleep. All right, that was very exciting. It's getting exciting. Not much left to read. So, making headway. Till next time.